lives around the country are being tested to the point of fracturing.
Some doses could be available as early as December.
A record number of current hospitalizations.
Another 1 million more infections added in the past 6 days.
WellSpring. So glad you guys are with us today and joining us here. I want to hope you feel welcome, and we're just, again, encouraged that you're here. You guys are I'm guessing, you guys are we don't really care about the Titans game that starts at noon crowd because you're here. First service was much larger than normal. If you are a Titans person, I will only take about an hour and a half today. So it'll be fine. We'll get you right out, and I'm glad that you're with us. Also want to welcome those of you who are online. As always, glad to have you guys along with us. Today's a great day. You've come on a great Sunday. If today's your first Sunday or one of your first Sundays, you picked a great Sunday. And let me just give you a picture of that. So you guys do the second service we do, which means for you guys, this is your first experience. But for us, this is like the second half of a ball game, right? We've already done something similar to this just earlier. And I know what God did first hour, and so I'm assuming what he's going to do this hour. And I'm excited about it. And one of the key things that early on that tripped me up or told me what was coming is all morning we were having little technical things that don't know. We have this brand new building and all this great stuff, and so thankful for the team to put all that together. And we're having all these little technical issues, which convinces me it's not material or personnel, it's spiritual stuff. Because I said it's going to be a good one because we're having little issues, and then we had issues during the day. So I just want to, again, before we get into this, I just want to say thank you and if you would help me say thank you to so many of the folks who help us manage all of that every week behind the scenes. So like right now, we got Greg and we got Chris, and upstairs we got Nick and Herbie and John, and these guys are all making this thing work and have done so many things to make it all work. And the team who spent hours and hours and hours, Nick and others in here, Levi and Eli and all the different ones who were part of that who weren't here this morning. Just thank you to all those guys. Anyway, but all of that to say, so we had this little Bibles first hour, and it just convinces me that there's some things that God wants to say to us, and he's going to use this time this morning. So you come on a great day. So today is the week 2 of a series we started last week. You can go online and look at the installment there and find that on our website as always. But it's week 2 of a series called How to Find Rest. And we're not talking about how to take a nap, like how to start the year with more sleep. That's not what we're talking about. You all know how to take a nap. We don't need to go into that. In fact, some of you who are Titans fans, you're going to have to stay up this afternoon and watch all the different games to see who's playing what. I'm a Colts fan. I can take a nap all afternoon. I don't care who wins anything. It's all good for me. So you guys have it a lot harder than me. Anyway, we're talking about a soul-level rest. We're not talking about a physical rest. Sometimes you can wake up after having a night's sleep and still be just weighted down with all this. We're talking about a soul-level rest. Jesus is describing a soul-level rest of peace and contentment for our souls that only he can provide. And today we're going to talk about how to get that. So you've come on a great Sunday because you don't see this kind of rest that I'm describing in our world. You just don't see it. This is not a political statement, but just the unrest of this week that we weren't expecting to see on our news screens and all of that. Whatever side politically you're on, I'm not even getting into that. Our world is in need of some peace. Our world is in need of some rest. There's a lot of unrest in our world. And that's not just out there, that's in us. I have a news app on my phone, and I've got a couple different ones, but one of the ones I have doesn't only pull world events and national events, but it also pulls local events, and it'll throw local events because it knows who you are better than you know who you are, right? So it throws local events at you. And so just this morning, I pulled up my news app. I was over at the office, and one of the top stories was a 16-year-old in Spring Hill who was being charged with first-degree attempted first-degree murder for shooting a 17-year-old neighbor just this last couple of days. I mean, that's in my news app. And it's not just out here locally, like, there's some messes around us. Like in this room, I've been a pastor long enough to know that a room this size, there's a lot of us who are in need of some significant rest, spiritually speaking, and Jesus wants to offer that to us. So we're going to talk about that here just in a few minutes. So the basis for the series is Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 11 where he says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Now, before we get into what that means and all of that kind of, and dive into that, we're going to do kind of a deep dive on those verses today. Before we do that, let me give you some context for what that passage is, because context always helps you. If you're new to studying the Bible, if you've been doing this a while, either way, if you want to know what a verse says, you can pluck a verse out and get a meaning. That's great. But if you can get the verses around it, get some context of what the story is happening, what's going on in the surrounding moments, you get a lot clearer picture and sometimes a more accurate picture than if you just pluck a verse out by itself. So let me give you some picture. This is Matthew chapter 11. If you go back two chapters to Matthew chapter 9, you see Jesus in a crowd of people. The whole chapter is him in a crowd of people. I don't know, but time-wise exactly, because it doesn't give us a lot of clues, but I think it's a picture of all day. Jesus is just going from person to person, family to family. So he'll heal this blind person and then spend some time with them. And then as soon as he turns around from them, they're going off, they're excited, they're going off, and then there's somebody behind them with a different need. This person's hungry, and he gives them something to eat. And he goes over here, and somebody can't walk. And then he goes over here, and somebody's depressed. And over here, somebody's angry. He just, all day, he's going from person to person to person, helping people out. That's Matthew chapter 9. And then Matthew chapter 10 starts with him calling his 12 disciples out of that crowd, the 12 from that crowd of people. And then the remainder of Matthew 10 is him talking to not only the disciples, these new chosen followers of his, but also he's talking to the crowd about these 12 leaders, kind of telling them, coaching them, how do you respond to these leaders he's just called? And with that context in mind, look at what some of the verses say, because this will help us. Verse 40 says of chapter 10, anyone who welcomes you, talking to the 12 disciples, anyone who welcomes you welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Now, again, he's talking to them, but he's doing it in a way that the crowd can kind of hear because he wants them to welcome the disciples. So he's kind of coaching the crowd on what to do. It says whoever welcomes a prophet, as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. So he's saying, if they welcome you as a prophet, you're a prophet, I've just made you a prophet. If they welcome you as a prophet, they'll get rewarded because some won't want to do that. Whoever welcomes a righteous person as a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. And if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you that person will certainly not lose their reward. Now, if you just pulled that last verse out by itself, give a cup of cold water to a little one, you're picturing giving Kool-Aid to the kids in the neighborhood when they get done playing soccer or whatever. And that's all great. Give Kool-Aid to the kids. They need Kool-Aid. That's not what he's talking about here. He's talking about his 12 disciples. He's getting ready to send them out. And he's like, you, the crowd, should help these 12 out. Even just a couple of cold waters, be kind to them because they need support as they're going out and doing this ministry. And when you realize the context, he's calling these 12 little ones. He's not being disrespectful. What's he talking about here? Well, if you dig into the surrounding understanding of who these guys are, very likely they were all very young. Like in my head, when I was a kid reading these passages, I would picture the 12 disciples as, 60-year-old men. They're Keith or something. You're old guys, really old guys who are serving Jesus. But they weren't very likely. Very likely, all of them except for Peter were probably teenagers. Peter was probably in his early 20s, but the rest of them were probably teenagers. And so Jesus is saying, if you support these little ones as a prophet, because some of you won't want to do that, I'm going to reward you for the same way I'm going to reward them. See, they weren't chosen because they were established. They weren't chosen because they were experienced or capable. They were chosen because they were eager and humble and hungry. And God said, you've got a lot of gaps in your resume, but I can fill in every gap in your resume as long as you're pursuing me. And he found these 12 guys who were pursuing him and said, I can take care of the deficiencies because of who you are. See, this is important because the invitation he gives right after that, the one we started the message with, the one he's giving us today, is not because we deserve it. He's not offering us an invitation to us because we're capable or because we deserve it or because we're good enough. We've not fooled him into thinking we're worthy of that. No, he understands he's willing to fill in every gap we have in our resume as long as we just come. So important. That gets to chapter 11, verse 25. It says, at that time, Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you're pleased to do. Now, he's making a little bit of a shot at the crowd here, because in this crowd, you have not only just the people in the crowd, you also have the 12 disciples, these teenage folks that he's chosen, these young men he's chosen, which, by the way, if you're a teenager, don't think you have to be an old guy to do something for God. Used 11 teenagers and a guy in his early 20s to change the world. He could use you. So he's talking not only to the crowd, not only to these guys, but also in the crowd is the religious leaders. And he's saying to them, to God, praying to God, kind of them overhearing it, God, thank you. You didn't just reveal this to the ones who were established and good enough and old enough. You didn't do that. You chose to honor these folks. And I'm thrilled you did that. He says, yes, Father, for this is what you were pleased to do. This whole chapter is built around a theme of God choosing to honor people who aren't quite ready for it. So he picks out the 12 disciples and honors them. The chapter started with him picking out John the Baptist and honoring him and saying, here's this guy, crazy man out in the woods, but God used him. And now he's opened up the invitation to us. And God has a way of offering the invitation to those who are not worthy of it and then filling in every gap that they don't have in their resume and using insignificant people to do significant things. It's a powerful theme in this passage. He does that today. I mean, could God not find a better, more qualified person to be the pastor of WellSpring? I'm confident he could find somebody better than he did to do that. Could God not find a better, more qualified person to lead your home than he did? Or to be in your workplace than he did? Or to be in your role than he did? I promise you he could find somebody better. But he gets a kick out of doing something significant with normal people like us. It's out of this pleasure that God extends the invitation that we started the message with, that I want to pull up again. Matthew 11:28, come to me, therefore, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. He's inviting us, all of us, the good and the bad, the young and the old, the rich and the poor, the weak and the strong, the very experienced and the little children. He's inviting all of us to come to him to find rest. Now, let me bottom line this for you, because I'm a bottom line guy, and if I don't get a bottom line, I get confused sometimes. So let me give you a bottom line. No matter what you've done, today is for you. No matter where you've been with God, today is for you. No matter what mistakes you've made, today is for you. No matter what you believe or don't at this point, God is offering you an invitation to come. So in a minute, when you get that invitation, don't assume it's not for you because of X or Y or Z. None of that's true. It's all a lie. God is offering up the invitation to all of you, just as he did to me, just as he did 12 teenagers back in the day. But I want you to notice two things about this passage, because this kind of jumped out at me this week. I want to do a deep dive into this passage a little bit. In verse 28, he says he's going to give us rest. Now, I know the font's a little small. We're working on that. But do you see that he's offering to give it to you? He says, come to me, and I will give you rest. And that tells us we can't not find this anywhere else but God. Jesus is the only one who's going to provide this kind of rest and peace and contentment and satisfaction to you. You're not going to find it anywhere else. And this is really key for us this month, because this month, we all start off this month by thinking, I'm going to make some changes to get myself where I want to be. So I'm going to take on a new diet plan. That's not going to get you where Jesus can. Or I'm going to try to do more exercise, or I'm going to read more. All great stuff. Not going to get you where you want to go spiritually. Only Jesus can do that. Hiring the right yoga instructor is not going to give you peace in ways that Jesus can give you peace. No one else provides that. Jesus says, come to me and I will give you rest. That's verse 28. But then verse 29, he says something different. And it's not a contradiction because it's him saying it both times. Verse 29, he says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, and you'll find rest. So verse 28 says, I'm going to give you rest. Verse 29 says, you're going to find rest. And what's he getting at there? Well, remember when he first started this context, it was all in the idea of this yoke, this picture of farming. If you're not a farmer and don't understand how those systems work back in the day, the yoke, they would have two oxen or two cows together, and they put a yoke on them to bind them together, and they'd pull more together than they could separately. And what farmers would sometimes do is they would take a stronger, more experienced ox, and they would put a newer, younger ox together with them. And the newer, younger ox may try to go this way and try to go that way, and he would zigzag across where the old ox would just kind of be right where he needs to be. And over time, he would try all these different directions and pull against himself, but then eventually he would quit fighting the yoke, and he would just get in line with the program, and man, he would really take off. And Jesus is saying, my way of life will lead you to an inner peace and an inner tranquility that nothing else will. But some of you are pulling this way and that, trying to, this is going to fix it, and that's going to fix it, and this is going to make it better, and this is going to, it's not. Come to me and learn from me, and you'll find rest for your souls. You just got to quit fighting me. You know, some of you have been fighting God. You've been keeping him at arm's length or resisting his words. And Jesus, I think, is saying maybe specifically to you, come to me, stop fighting all these other directions, trying to find rest. I'll give it to you if you'll just come to me. Now listen, this may not be for all of you, so I'm going to talk straight to a couple of you for a minute. I don't know who that is, but some of you can check out for a minute and you can come back. If you're online, I'm going to talk to you as well. Some of you, this is not you, you can get a sandwich or something, but I'm going to talk to the rest of you for just a second. Some of you are full of worry, and you're full of fear, and you just can't get settled, and you don't sleep well at night, and you have all of this unsettledness in your life, and you're tired of it. You're tired of being tired. You're just spent, and you've tried all these different things, and you have a whole list of new things you're going to try. Can I just say to you, is it possible that the thing you need most is what Jesus has already offered to you? You're pulling this way and that, trying to find rest. Is it possible that none of those things are going to lead you where you want to go like Jesus will if you'll just stop fighting him? Take his yoke upon you. Learn from him, and you'll find rest for your souls. You know, I have a friend whose son was super strong-willed. I say was, he's a grown man now with his own kids, so it's a different deal. But she was telling me a while back that when he got old enough to start having kids, one of his kids is pretty strong-willed, and he realized at that point the torture he put his mother through. And they had a conversation about how strong-willed he was, which, you know, some of you have that kid in your house. You know what I'm talking about, right? So had this very strong-willed child who then had his own kids, and so they started talking about what it was like for her being his mama growing up. And she says to him, she said, it seemed like every day you were trying to take over the house. And he said, I was. That's what I was trying to do every day, is take over the house. And she says, it was like you were trying to say, maybe I can be in charge today. Like they wouldn't let me be in charge yesterday. They wouldn't let me be in charge the day before. But maybe today's my day. Maybe they'll let me be in charge of mom and dad. I'll run this thing today. He goes, that's right. That's what I was doing. She said, why were you doing that? He said, well, I woke up every morning and thought, maybe today they'll let me do it. Maybe today will be the day. I can take over and I can be in charge of this deal. You know, some of you have that kid in your house. The reality is many of us are that kid to our Father in heaven. I certainly am. Where I think, okay, my way didn't work yesterday. My way didn't work the day before, but maybe today's my day. Maybe my way will make this all work if I'll just do what God said. Do what I think instead of what God says. I want you to hear God speaking to you personally. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart. I won't fight you. I won't force you to do it. I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. Now, all of that was to get me to where I want to go right now. Okay, so here's the main point. If I missed you, come back, because this is what you need to do. You need to catch this. He's speaking in this passage to two groups of people. And some of you are in one group, and some of you are in the other group, and some of you are in both groups. And I'll leave that up to you to decide which one you are. But he's talking to two groups of people and offering rest to two groups of people. And I need you to catch this. He says, come to me, those who are weary and those who are burdened. You see that in the passage? Come to me, all who are weary and all who are burdened. And that doesn't mean a lot to us. Like, and when you read through that, you think, well, that's just kind of like a repetition. It's kind of poetic, whatever. I think if you could understand the original language, and I just know this much, you understand it's bigger than that because they're written in a different tense. The word weary is an active word in the original Greek language. Now, active means action has caused it. So you're weary, and you've kind of done it to yourself. You've done something that made you weary. And so he's saying, if you're weary and you've kind of done it to yourself, I'm inviting you to come to me. You know, back to that yoke picture again. You've pulled this way and that. You've tried all these different things. You're making yourself crazy with all the different activity. And I've never asked you to do it, Jesus says. I never designed you to do it. I didn't invite you to do it. I didn't ask you to do all those other things. I just asked you to follow me and you'd find rest. And now you're weary and you've kind of done it to yourself, but I'm not holding that over to you. I'm not judging you for it. I'm just saying, just stop it. Stop fighting me. Come to me and you'll find that rest you've been looking for. You know, maybe for you, maybe for your family, you don't need a New Year's resolution of something new you're going to start. Maybe you need a New Year's de-resolution of some old thing you're going to stop. Because you tried all the things and they're not leading you where you want to go. Instead of resolving to start something new, resolve to stop something old. Maybe you could get further with less. Maybe you need to ask the question as a family, what are we going to cut out? Because spiritually speaking, sometimes less is more. I love the writer of Hebrews who writes this for us. The writer of Hebrews says, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus. I want you to notice the word there, perseverance. If you're tired, you need perseverance. If you're tired of being tired, you need perseverance. And he's talking about perseverance here. And sometimes perseverance comes from throwing off sinful things. So if you're caught up in some sinful patterns and lifestyles, you just throw that off. That'll help you have perseverance. Sometimes perseverance comes from throwing off good things that are not sinful. They're just entangling you in some busyness and focus that's taking your focus away from Jesus, which is causing you to be tired. So we're weary, this group. Active word, we've done that to ourselves. I want you to hear the invitation of Jesus. Take my yoke upon you. What are you going to drop out of your life to make it work better? I'm not just saying that hypothetically, rhetorically. What are you going to drop out of your life? Answer to yourself. What are you going to drop out of your life to make your life better? What are you going to drop out of your life to make your life better? If you were to say yes to this invitation, what would that require of you? And are you willing to do it? So some of us are weary. Jesus invites us to a soul level rest, but he also invites another group. He says, come to me, all who are weary and all who are burdened. Weary and burdened, it's not the same word. Sometimes some translations call it heavy laden. I think it's the old King James. I love that picture. Where the word weary is an active Greek word, the word burdened is a passive Greek word. So weary is active. You've done that to yourself. Burdened is passive. Someone has done it to you, or something has done it to you. You didn't do it to yourself. You're weighed down, but it's not necessarily your fault. You didn't do it. It just happened to you. Someone or something has burdened you. Now, you know what burdens us, right? Life burdens us. Life is a burden. The Bible says that in the beginning, God made the world perfect and good and right. And then at the end of the Bible, it says that God's going to remake the world perfect and good and right. But we live in that middle part. And in the middle part, the world's a mess. The Bible doesn't shy away from that. Our life reflects that. And right now, our life is burdensome. And if you live long enough, you're going to be filled up with burdens. And eventually, no matter how strong you are, catch this, no matter how strong you are, eventually you're going to have more burdens than you have the strength to carry. Doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've lived enough life. Hurtful words, significant disappointments, regrets and sin and pain. Life is full of a heavy stream of burdens, and if you live long enough, you will gain enough of those burdens that you will no longer be able to carry them yourself. Let me prove it to you. You ever notice how a toddler seems unburdened? Running around like all crazy. That's why they can run around all day. They're not carrying any burdens. Other times you'll meet an older person, and I don't mean this physically, but emotionally, spiritually, you can just tell they're kind of stooped over. They're burdened down. Life is thrown one challenge after another, one burden after another. And even though this is a strong man or a strong woman, they're just stooped over after years of standing tall. They're burdened. They didn't do it. It happened to them, but the weight is just the same. And eventually, it got to be more than they knew how to carry. And all of us were designed to give our burdens to God, to walk in a yoke with God. And if you don't pass those burdens off to God, eventually, no matter how strong you are, life will be more burdensome than you know how to carry. And Jesus says, come to me, all who are burdened, and I'll give you rest. But the tense has to change. You know, you're burdened, that's passive tense. But your road to healing is active. He says the road to healing is coming to him. You've got to do it. The burden was their fault, but healing comes from your action, your freedom going to God. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. In just a minute, I want to give you a chance to act out on that. And you can do that a lot of different ways. You can do it in your seat. You and God, just talk some things out. You can come down to the front here and pray over here at this steps or over here at this steps. I'll be in the back, would love to pray with you. But would you lay your burdens down at the foot of the cross? You tried to carry them by yourself. You felt like you were strong enough, and eventually you've gotten to the point where you're just like, I don't know that I'm strong enough anymore. That's a good thing. You're not strong enough. Hand those over to God and lay them here. Now, those of you watching online, this is not like a place where you check out. I want you to model this for your family. if you're carrying some burdens and you know that's you or not, then take a moment at the end of this service before you go wash dishes and do whatever. Like take a moment and give those things to God, and your kids will see that. It's a powerful example. You know, sometimes I see not only an individual who's burdened, sometimes I'll see a couple who's burdened. And you can tell the weight of the relationship over time has just put a burden on them. You know, sometimes marriages are killed with one thing, or relationships with a parent or a child are killed by one thing, one indiscretion, or one affair, or one abuse, or one addiction, or one thing kind of kills the marriage. That happens sometimes, but more often than not, it's 1,000 cuts. It's a bunch of little things, little burdens that just keep piling up on the relationship, and eventually, no matter how strong they are, they're not strong enough to carry that burden anymore. You know, newlywed couples are never burdened. You notice that? I mean, they're naive sometimes, occasionally annoying, but they're never burdened. Like they're always just so happy, and he's so great, and she's so wonderful. But you give them a little time, and burdens happen. Because life brings burdens. Give them 7 or 8 years, and you'll see a couple who's burdened. You know what the two most common years in a person's marriage are to get divorced? Year 7 and year 8. Why is that? Is that such a traumatic year? No, I think it's the place where you've either got to be able to hand off burdens, or they'll be too much for most people to carry. You can't live with each other 7 or 8 years without enough burdens to jump off. It's too much. The annoyances, the hurts, the grievances become too much to bear. Some of you are much stronger, and you've gotten further than 7 or 8 years, and now you're feeling like, man, the weight of that is just too much. And on top of that, to make it more work, this is not bad news, this is good news, I promise you. And on top of that, you know what the number one month to file for divorce is? Every year. It's January. I don't know if it's because the holidays are over and now the kids have done their thing and now we can do, or maybe it's a New Year's resolution. I don't know what it is, but every year, divorce lawyers are really busy in January. So if your marriage is year 5, 6, 7, 8, and it's January, I promise you, it doesn't have to end this way. This is not the way it has to be. There's a better option. Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. I said a minute ago, I thought it'd be great if an individual, man or woman, would stand up and say, you know what, I've got a burden, I need to lay it down. Or I've been so weary from all these things that are distracting me, I'm gonna come lay that down. I think it would be fantastic if there was a couple or two couples who said, you know what, we've got a collective set of burdens, and it's time for us to face this together. We're going to lay that down. I want to end by leading you through a prayer of reflection. You know, if you're somebody who's new to faith and you don't know maybe how to pray, what to say, this would be a great thing for you. If you're somebody who's been a believer for a long time, this is a great prayer for you to add to your arsenal of prayers maybe. It reminds me of David's words in Psalms 139 where it says, search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's anything offensive in me and lead me in the way everlasting. It reminds me of that, but I'm going to use Jesus' words out of Matthew 11, where you just go to God and say, God, will you just search me? Is there anything in me that's making me weary? I'm doing it to myself. I'm doing it to my family. We're doing it to our souls. Would you take whatever that is? Maybe it's sinful, maybe it's not. God, there's something in me. Would you just search me? If there's anything in me that's causing me to be weary, would you take it? Point it out to me and I'll give it to you. But take it. And then pray to God and say, God, is there anything in me that's causing me to feel burdened? Maybe it's a moment. If it's a moment, God was there. He knew it. He saw the mistake, he saw the pain, he saw the tears, he was there for that moment. You can offer that to him. Maybe it's not one moment, maybe it's an ongoing in a relationship or something. There's just all these burdens. God, would you take all of these burdens from me? It's too much for me to carry. I titled this message, Tired of Being Tired. Because it's one thing to be tired. You know, this didn't go the way you want, or this didn't turn out the way you thought, or this person said something you didn't like, or did something that wasn't kind, and you're tired of that. But then there comes a point where you've been tired enough, and you're just tired of being tired, and your hope goes way down, because for a while with a person or a situation, you think, well, it's bad, but it's going to get better. And some are more optimistic and some are less. But you have that hope in you that this is going to lead to it. I just need to stick with it. But then there comes a point where you're just tired of being tired. And you give up hope that it's ever going to be better. And you give up hope that you're ever going to make it right. And you give up hope that you're ever going to feel the way you think you ought to feel. And that they're going to do and be what they think. And you just get tired of being tired. And I just want to lead us through the prayer we just talked about. Where whatever it is that God may be leading you to do, you take those burdens and you give them to God and ask Him for rest. So would you bow your head? Let me just lead you through that prayer together. God, would you search us as David invited? We open our heart to you. Would you search us and know our heart? Would you examine our anxious thoughts and see if there's anything that's not right in us? So God, if there's anything in us that's causing us to be weary, a sin, a pattern of behavior, an addiction, maybe it's something that's good, it's just distracting us. If there's anything in us that's causing us to be weary, we invite you to point it out. God, I speak for all of us when I ask you to give us the courage to do whatever it is you just asked us to do. Sometimes those things that make us weary are very close to our heart, and we don't want them out of our life. That's why we hang on to them when they don't work. So if there's anything in us that you need to change, anything in me you need to change, we give you free access. God, we ask you, second, is there anything, say this in your own words to God, is there anything that's causing me to be burdened? Is there any unforgiveness in my heart? Is there any pain or regret that I keep hanging on to? Is there any burden in me that I need to release? Point that out. Ask God to point that out. God, I'm glad you come to us as a father, not just as a king, not just as a tyrant, not just a leader and a coach. You can be all those things, God, but you come to us as a father because you care for us, your kids. And some of us right now are really weary from this life we're trying to live. And some of us, God, are really burdened from things that have been done to us. And I can feel the weight. I can feel the weight of this room. And I would ask, God, that you would take these things, these painful things, often as an offering to you. We offer them to you. And we pray in return you would give us rest. We thank you for Jesus who makes that possible. We turn our lives over to him for the first time for some, maybe for again, anew for others. But God, we give our lives fully to you, and we ask you to give us a level of soul care and rest that nothing else can provide. We thank you for Jesus. We pray in his name.